Mark Bedard. I'm the adapter of the Cocoanuts, and I'm also in the production playing Mr. Hammer, which is the Groucho Marx role. And I was first inspired to adapt the Cocoanuts during our run of Animal Crackers in 2012. I wasn't necessarily a fan of the Marx Brothers before that production, but as soon as I started doing research to play the part, I did a complete 180 and just fell absolutely in love with these kids who had grown up in the Jewish ghetto and had gotten into vaudeville because their mother had encouraged them, because their uncle had been in vaudeville, and she thought they could make money. Their performances are what helped that family get by. And their mom would be in the wings sometimes when they're engaging in anarchy going, "Remember the mortgage," you know, and things like that. So, and all of a sudden their anarchy and their childlike behavior made so much sense when you look at these kids who didn't really get a childhood. They had to work, they had to perform in front of vaudeville audiences, which are maybe the toughest audience you can imagine, in some of the worst theaters and worst places you can imagine, and they learned how to be funny for those audiences. And so I had done all this research and reading about them and watching all their movies and listening to all the radio shows I could find and watching episodes of You Bet Your Life with Groucho. I'd gained such an interest in them that I wanted to look at another piece of their work while I was doing Animal Crackers, and I knew that the Cocoanuts had come before Animal Crackers. It had been their second Broadway show and their first movie. In fact, they had shot the movie The Cocoanuts while they were performing Animal Crackers on Broadway. Although The Cocoanuts isn't a great movie and there's footage been lost and stuff like that, the play must have been good. It must have been a Broadway hit, and so I became really interested in learning about it, and so I ordered a script of it. And when I received it, I saw all this material, including scenes and songs that weren't in the movie. And I became really excited about, oh, we could bring this material back to an audience, to audiences, and have them see it again. I had two really great advantages in adapting the play. I had the whole Marx Brothers body of work that I could look at and assess and analyze and really gauge when they were really successful and when they weren't as successful, and take those elements, take the good elements and remove the bad. So I could look at the fact that their two best movies, or their two highest grossing movies, were Night at the Opera and Day at the Races, which are centered around a love story, and I saw that there was a love story in the Cocoanuts, so that's one of the things I could tweak and restructure all the same vaudeville material and all the same Irving Berlin songs and make it a storybook musical. And that leads me to the second advantage I had, which is I could look at what we know about musical theater now. When they first did the Cocoanuts on Broadway in 1925, it was a vaudeville musical. And musicals were just starting out around that time, and musicals have evolved since then, and I believe they've become better and better. And musicals at their best are really cohesive pieces. Whereas a vaudeville musical would have been, now we're going to do a dance number, now we're going to have a little bit of story, now we're going to have a comic routine, now we're going to do another kick line with a bunch of dance girls, and now we're going to do another story scene. But great musicals have all those things of a piece, of one unit. They're all story driven. So I could look at that as well and take the Cocoanuts and try to restructure it to make it less like a vaudeville musical and more like a storybook musical. So using those two things, that's kind of how I've come up with this adaptation of the Cocoanuts. One of the most influential things I read about Groucho Marx, the real Groucho Marx, is that he had always wanted to be a writer, but he was a performer. And so he thought the happy marriage of those two things was he could ad-lib. That was his way he could write new material while he was performing in vaudeville and in sketches and things like that. And so he said the first time he ever tried ad-libbing, it went incredibly well. The audience really laughed. It ruined the rest of the scene, and Chico was so mad at him, but he was hooked. And from then on, he made it his goal to try at least one new joke every performance. And that really influenced me. And that really goes to the heart of what I think is the difference between the Marx Brothers on film and on stage. When you read accounts of the Marx Brothers on stage, people say there was no comparison. They were so crazy on stage and so funny. And the film tries to capture that, but it can't capture the one element that really made them what they were, which was anything could happen in a stage production. Whereas on film, we know what happens. You can go back and watch it over and over again and still love it, but nothing new is going to happen. So with that in mind, I thought if we're going to do stage productions of the Marx Brothers, it has to include that element. So I also try to add at least, I think, like 4 new jokes every show, on top of anything that might come to my head in the moment, any ad-libs I might say off the cuff, or improvisations that might happen with the audience. And that way we ensure that no 2 performances are ever alike.